healing, right, is a journey. We forgive because we're forgiven. It's like you're giving up all this power, all this glory, so that other people can be forgiven. I went to prison at 12 years old all the way to 25. Do I regret any of it? I actually don't. I used to, but I don't anymore because I realized all of it was necessary to bring me where I'm at today.
Did you want to forgive your dad?
Welcome to another episode 10 today on the Unlearned Wisdom Podcast by Johnny Chang with the two wise men. All three of us are three wise men. Today, we're going to be talking about forgiveness, how to apply forgiveness, what is biblical forgiveness. We're going to answer your questions on forgiveness. And yeah, let's get it started.
By the end of this episode, you're going to learn how to say sorry.
A lot of people struggle with forgiveness. It's something that we know we all should do, but it's very difficult, right? And obviously my story is, I became famous for forgiving my aggressor, which was my father at that time.
For the new listeners, can you give them a quick background of what that story was?
Yeah, so I grew up in the projects. At the age of 12, I joined a gang. My parents were both immigrants from Korea, but ethnically Chinese. My dad, he was an alcoholic, very, very, very like ruled with an iron fist, dictator type of father. And so he would beat me, beat my mom, beat my brother. And I hated him. I straight up hated him. I ran in the streets because I didn't want to come home, because every time I came home, if he was drunk, he was beating on me, or he was, belittling me or verbally abusing me even. So, I went to the streets, and I kind of attributed a lot of my trauma and my gang life, through my father being violent and messing up my childhood, right? So long story short, we end up meeting one day after I received salvation, learned from my pastor that we're righteous, and get challenged by my pastor to actually say sorry to him, which I thought was a crazy, crazy thing, right? It doesn't matter what country you're in. The aggressor is the one that always apologizes. But me being the victim, this idea that I had to apologize to my dad when I didn't ask to be born, when I was in the right, I was a child, I didn't choose to grow up in the projects, I didn't choose to grow up in poverty, and yet I have to then go and say sorry that I was a gang member, sorry that what you did directly affected me, and sorry and ask forgiveness. It was a wild concept for me to grasp, But what's beautiful is when I did, my father actually apologized too, and he recognized that, the absurdity of that, Johnny saying sorry when he didn't do anything, it really pricked him in his heart, and it shattered that wall of self-righteousness and that ego, and it made him really face his fears of being a bad father. He's like, man, I'm a bad father, but I can't be so bad that like my son is going to carry the weight of being wrong his whole life because of something that I did and the decisions that I made, right? That directly affected him and the family. So yeah, it was a beautiful thing. We rekindled. I love my dad. He built this set, where we have a great relationship now. And I think the target of the episode, the goal of this episode is to also get you guys to be able to live with the peace that I have. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go and apologize, okay? So don't click off, right? I'm not telling you guys to go and apologize to your aggressors and whatnot. We all come from different walks, but I think what's important is recognizing that we're all interconnected to the struggle, that people are broken and they will produce broken results. And it's okay to be understanding, yet still draw boundaries, and things like that. So we're going to get into all of that today.
That story is really famous, but there's a deeper story to it. Like, it wasn't just we forgave each other and it was puppies and rainbows. So can you really tell us the real story of from that moment, like what transpired?
So yeah, from that moment, there was still times where I would see spurts of my dad, because I got saved and we said sorry, we hugged it out at that restaurant and it was all good. Then there was that lingering question of like, now what? He didn't go to church after that. He didn't really ever say sorry again. So there was still a lot of things that we were struggling with. He was still kind of very spiteful, and speaking bad about my brother and saying my brother won't change. And, and it was just kind of like a lot of things that he didn't change right away. And that's when I started to realize that healing is a process, right? It's not, you just say sorry. Forgiveness is instant. Healing is a process, though. It takes time to heal, right? It's like surgery, right? We cut out the cancer, which was, this unforgiveness, this self-righteousness. But he still had to heal, right? Like surgery, they cut out the cancer, but you still have painful. But it was like a growing pain, so it was very beautiful. There was ups and downs. There was times where we would get into it again. It wasn't just all peaches and cream, but the heart was different in that foundationally it wasn't resentment anymore. It was all forgiveness based, right? Okay, let me try to understand him this time. Whereas before we were estranged, we would never talk, and it would never operate from a position of peace. It was always like, well, you did this and I'm right, and you did this and I'm right. It was really toxic actually, and counterproductive.
Did you want to forgive your dad? I've been so bitter sometimes where I literally don't want someone to apologize because I don't even want to forgive them.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me.
Yeah.
Did you want this, or did you?
I didn't want to forgive my dad. However, I think I did want a relationship deep down. Every son, every child, honestly, wants to have a relationship with the person who raised them and had them. So I know I always wanted to have that father figure, because when you don't have something, you long for it, right? So yeah, I always wanted to be cool with my dad, and I understood that we would have to have that hard talk. But like you said, I was hardened. I was like, I'm not gonna talk to him. I'd rather just let him die, and then me carry this like amount of shame and resentment and frustration and poison to my soul, essentially, rather than trying to unhash that. But I understood that deep in the core, I always wanted to be cool with my dad, like every other kid. They always want to forgive. And the reason why I would get so mad at myself was that I hated that part of me. I wish actually that I could just let it go and be like, he doesn't matter to me anyways, But if I was being honest, I couldn't, because every time I saw other people who were happier than me and had fathers that were loving, I felt super angry. Honestly, I was like pissed, and I'm like, why am I so mad if I claim that I don't care about this person? And it was proof that deep down, actually, I did cherish a relationship. I did want to be loved. I did want to have that fatherly love, that relationship between a father and a son, and watching, movies where parents are like guiding their children and playing catch, and all these things really did affect me, actually, deep down. I was just running from it.
Dang, like watching stuff like Home Alone.
Yeah.
Like, this guy has a happy family.
Yeah.
What's true forgiveness based on what you've learned?
I think true forgiveness is releasing the power that people have over you from the past and even the present. So that's what's defined to me. When I was able to say sorry to my dad, although it seemed kind of weird, I was able to then release the chains that he had on me, and even the chains that I wrapped around myself in. So yeah, I think worldly forgiveness, and I think what people teach about forgiveness is it's for other people, but I think true forgiveness is really for you, right? Releasing yourself, canceling the debt, just not trying to collect the debt, just like waving it off and going, hey, I'm going to decide, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. So I'm going to move forward. And that's what true forgiveness is. It's being able to let go of things, even when those people aren't really sorry, or, just basically not letting that stronghold over your life anymore dictate your happiness, dictate your peace, dictate your sadness, dictate everything.
Man, I have a million questions. I know all the listeners here are jumping out of their seats being like, yeah, but what about blah, 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 blah? We're going to get into all that. So before, though, you defined your version. You also defined a good version of the world. What would you define biblical forgiveness, or what does the Bible say about forgiveness?
So the Bible says trusting God's judgment over your own judgment. Right. So accepting God's verdict over your own verdict, essentially. Right. And I've learned that he says this, God doesn't say to forgive because it's an act of doing good for God. He's saying to forgive because, again, it frees the chains and the bonds that people and the past have over you. Right. This bitterness is like a spiritual poison. It literally seeps into you and it kills you slowly. Right. It's like, and if you have resentment and you have bitterness, it's like you're drinking poison expecting somebody else to die. It's only going to hurt you. Right. So biblical forgiveness is, okay, God, I'm forgiving them, not because, I'm better than them, but because you also forgave them and you also forgave me. Mm-hmm. Yes, they did me wrong, but how many times did I do you wrong? And so God wants us to recognize that biblical forgiveness is, exalting God's verdict over your thoughts and your verdict and your judgment and your feelings.
So in a situation like you, where you were the victim, why does someone have to forgive?
It goes back to the point of like forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. Right. So if you're, let's say, carrying guilt, shame, anger, frustration, resentment from what somebody did to you, like most human beings, then yeah, like you have to let that go because you're letting go of the chains that are digging into you, right? But if you're not struggling with it, then yeah, I mean, there would be no actual reason to do so, right? So again, people read the Bible prescriptively, like a commandment, right? But it's just a description. So not everyone is dealing with depression. Not everyone is really like, and it's actually more depressing if they rehash those things. So if it's something that you can move forward, it's all relative, right? Like, and also subjective. But at the end of the day, if it's not bothering you, right? When I'm answering in that way, then it's not an issue. Like you can move forward. You don't have to do what we did. But 9 times out of 10, in my experience, doing one-on-ones with people, they say that it's not, but you have to be authentic with yourself and be real. Like, is it really bothering me? Is it stuff that's holding me back? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, like I said, you forgive because you deserve it, not because they deserve it.
What do you feel about the statement "time heals all"?
Mhm.
Because there are probably moments in my life where I felt some way about some person, but genuinely over time, I was just like, eventually let it go or whatever it is. Like I guess that is a form of forgiveness in myself, but I never said out loud, like, I forgive that person, never talked to them. I just kind of like moved on with my life.
Yeah, that happens too. And that, like I said, that's good.
Situational.
It's true. Yeah, it's situational and it's good. That means you receive grace from God because for some people, time doesn't heal. There are people who are still struggling 40 years from now. I've coached people who are 60, 70 years old and still like have that replaying that trauma. So this is really, again, relative and like subjective. But if you're struggling with it, then these are kind of the things to do. If you're not, praise be to God, because honestly, not everyone does struggle with that. There are people who just chose to forgive with time.
Okay, you tell me if this is full forgiveness or if I've gotten over it. So I used to have a boss that was just a dookie head, just like a horrible person. And literally, I left the company. I made the guy tons of money. Left the company, just blocked him on everything, and just never thought about him ever again. But every once in a while, when he comes up in my head, I'm like, God, that guy was such a goober. But would I ever want to work for him? Am I resentful? Am I like, I don't care? But when I think about him, it's not necessarily positive thoughts.
Yeah.
Is that still a poison I'm holding inside myself?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
It's good to compare in that way because at the same time, the reason why you're able to forgive him, Jeremy, is because you leveled up. So with time, normally situations get better and you cling on to something more hopeful. So that's why you're like, he sucks. But like you're not like allowing it to affect you so much that it's like crippling you. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like it's a poison slowly. If it's crippling you, if it's making you make decisions based off of that, because it's something in the past, right? You're not making any decisions off of that. You're just reflecting and go, yeah, that guy was a whatever, and you're calling it what it is, right? So that's not a resentment or holding on to something. It's more of like, oh, I allowed that to happen. I trusted this person, trusted myself. Man, like a person like that, that's not good for me. From here on out, like my lesson was learned, and it is. You've been a lot more, just working with you. You're very like meticulous with everything. You're cautious. There's contracts in place, things like that, because you've learned, oh, I can't just do this anymore. Doesn't negate the fact that he's a dookie head, but just because he's a dookie head does not mean you're holding on to it. Like, oh, I need to not call him a dookie head anymore. No, dude, he's a dookie head if he is, right? And that's the truth. However, you've moved on from that and you're way more happier. He doesn't affect your decisions really in a negative way, at least. If anything, he's actually it was necessary for you to protect yourself more from people like him. Like I said, guys, it's either a lesson or a blessing. As soon as you recognize that, you won't have any resentment. You'll recognize and you'll welcome all types of things that happen in your life. I'm an example of that. I went to prison at 12 years old all the way to 25. Do I regret any of it? I actually don't. I used to, but I don't anymore because I realized all of it was necessary to bring me where I'm at today. And just because I couldn't see it back then does not mean that it was bad, right? And just because you see something that's good does not mean it's all good, right? I've learned, to just move forward and allow God to do these things.
You don't have to necessarily be happy-go-lucky thinking that person didn't affect you.
Yeah.
It's more of is that person still affecting your actions?
Yes.
That's the difference of whether or not you're fully over it.
Yes.
I wonder, I just want to jump to this topic then, because I think it's relatable to a lot of people, but like forgiving an ex, right? I guess, like, do you guys, either of you have any stories of like how like an ex or a bad breakup manipulated your actions? Like maybe one could be like, oh, I'm going to go sleep with a bunch of girls to make her pay or something like that. Like, or do you have any stories like that?
When I got cheated on and I felt like this person was a person from that lifestyle, from whether it was escorting or stripping or whatever, women like this, they call them fast women. I think what was really bad was that it pissed me off to see that every girl was like that. And that was something that I needed to let go, not with that person, but internally, right? So that's one person who did you dirty. Like, it doesn't mean every single person is like that, but that's a prime example of allowing people to affect your life, to where even afterwards you're now bringing your baggage and kind of blanking it over people. And again, that's why God says in Isaiah 43, he says it in all over the Bible, don't think about your past and don't say the former days were better, right? Don't look back, because what happens is you then start to allow the things from your past to affect what's in the present, and that's really, really like fear-based, right? And it's also illogical, right? You're not supposed to take this person, for example, is different. My ex is different than the person that you're with right now, right? So it's not about like I'm going to trust my thoughts and be cautious of every woman. You should be cautious, but you shouldn't be like, oh, she has a similar background, therefore that's who she is, So yeah, it's not right. After all that time in prison, 13 years, I never thought I'd choose to go back.
The Polunsky unit in Livingston. Maximum security prison.
Some of the worst criminals in our nation sit on death row, awaiting execution dates that could come at almost any time.
I remember wanting to live that lifestyle. I remember being a gang member, robbing people.
Dude, who's this Johnny guy?
A rival gang called Watching, one of the most cold-blooded, vicious murders they've ever seen.
Your past will haunt you because Satan utilizes that.
People who have been incarcerated are going to affect America more than anyone else as a whole.
For every 5 inmates that are being released, 3 of them are going to return within 2 years. We have to get away from trying to recycle people, but to get them to a place where they become men and women of integrity.
Think about the consequences. I know that you think that nobody loves you, but God loves you.
And the more we grow and mature and form relationships from the outside to the inside, I think the more that we can be rehabilitated and become reintegrated in society.
The Bible says don't judge, but then it also has, you got to discern the spirit.
How do you deal with your family not believing that you've changed?
How do you actually forgive?
So I think everything is obviously situational, but overall, if you want forgiveness, you have to make a decision that we're all human and we're all broken, and we all start at a position, right? We may be dealt cards differently in life. Like some people can have more money, other people can have a better, social status. But at the end of the day, we're all interconnected through sin and blemishes and shortcomings. So we have to be a little more graceful with people who, even though they may have blatantly disrespected us, they're also people who are broken and were taught specific set of values. And with that comes pain and hurt, right? Any relationship, you're leaving yourself vulnerable, whether it's a business relationship, like Jeremy was saying, or whether it's an intimate relationship, or even when it's a parental relationship or, relationship with your kids, there's always vulnerability there. And where there's vulnerability, there's actual chances of being hurt, right? So recognizing that hurt people, but you could be the change, right? I say hurt people, but change people. So like a lot of people stay in the mindset of I'm hurt. Well, you're also going to hurt other people too if you stay in that mindset. But if you're like, I'm hurt, but I decided to make a change. I decided to trust God, I decided to move forward, then you kind of exude that, right? And you start to move in that fashion, and then people start to recognize that, and you can start to heal. Like I chose to do that. I had to make a decision. Like, am I gonna continuously allow my dad to shape my identity, or am I gonna allow God to shape my identity? Which is trusting His word, trusting what He says about me over what my dad said about me. You have your worldly parents, but then you have your actual father, right? Which is God, who tells you, you're mine. I made you wonderfully. I've forgiven you, and you're a new creature. So you're able to forgive somebody when you start to think about like you being a person that was forgiven, right? You start to have more compassion, right? So if you want to forgive somebody, you have to make the decision to say, okay, they're hurt people, I'm hurt. I was hurt too. We're in the same boat. Acknowledging that first will then, I believe, the byproduct is forgiveness, empathy, compassion, all those things. But if you're like, no, I'm better than them, we're not the same. Yeah, I messed up, but they messed up more than me. Then you assume this position of not only self-righteousness, but then basically being a sinner, judging other people for sinning differently than you, when we're all technically the same under God, so. Yeah.
Why is it still hard even after I've forgiven somebody?
Because forgiveness and healing, right, is a journey. So forgiveness, for example, is instant, but healing is a process, right? And I said it earlier, but essentially when you break a bone and you go and you, let's say you dislocate your shoulder and you go to the doctor and they fix it instantly, right? They pop it back into place. Technically it's fixed, but why can you not lift it up? Why does it still get sore and stuff like that? Is because the healing process, even in our body, God is showing us that it takes time. You have to give it time. But a lot of people are like, they're looking for miracles. Oh, I said, I'm sorry, I should instantly feel better. But just like you didn't have trauma overnight, your trauma usually compounds, right? It takes time to build up to that. It's going to also take time to break it all down. So, once we recognize that we forgave somebody, that's step one. Beautiful, beautiful, right? But at the same time, there now starts a process of healing, which is with my father too. We still got into it. We still argued. It wasn't like we said sorry, we hugged it out. We had these huge explosive unlocks and then was like kosher after that. No, he would still bring up my past. There was a time where he even was like, oh, you're just a gang member. Again, he said that to me, which triggered me, obviously. But then during those times, I was able to see from a heart posture that, hey, my dad is saying these things because he's angry. Oh, yeah. He's also healing. He's also coming to gripes that he wasn't a good father. And that's a hard thing to come to. It's a battle internally. So he may be saying stuff about me, but it's really a projection, right? So when people say stuff about you, rather than listening to their mouth, you have to listen to their hearts. And how you do that is you have to recognize that nobody wants to be sad. Nobody wants to hurt people. Nobody gets born and goes, hey, I'm going to do this. The society, this world is broken, and it's going to produce broken human beings. And they will operate from a position of brokenness. You can't expect perfection from imperfection. So once you recognize that, then you're like, okay, all right, I understand. It's still painful for me. Then they're healing and they're painful. Sometimes when you're really painful, you lash out. Sometimes when you get in, there's a term of like you're hangry, right? You get hungry and normally something wouldn't bother you, but because you're hungry and you're stressed out, you then, act based off of the hunger. That's not how you always are. It's just when you're hungry. Same thing. When people are broken and they're healing, they may lash out because it's painful. But later on, that's not really what they want, right? They're just lashing out because it's the healing process is a painful process. But not all pain is bad. Just like a surgery. Cutting it open, you remove the cancer and the tumor, but then it takes weeks, even months to heal back into place, remove the stitches. It's all painful, right? You may move around, even though the cancer's out of your body already. It's still painful to you because of the incision, because of the diet that you have to eat, the restrictions. And yeah, you may lash out during those times. My friend's a nurse and she's always like, yeah, they just get mad at me. And I realize they're not mad at me. They're mad because they want to be healed and the process is not matching their timing. So that's why God also wants to cultivate patience inside of us. Patience is very important. So, yeah.
Well, I was just about to ask about patience because you're saying forgiveness takes time.
Yeah.
What if during that time of forgiveness, they keep offending against you?
Yeah, so how do I forgive someone who is still hurting me?
Yeah, like how do like during
that's a
that time
good
of forgiveness, someone is still hurting me. Or even for example, if I'm trying to forgive myself for something I've done, and in that time I keep doing it,
Yeah.
it's like, how do you forgive for something that keeps happening?
So again, you forgive somebody based off of your own freedom. So forgiveness is free, but then setting boundaries is very biblical. So you can still set a boundary and forgive them from a distance too, right? You don't have to physically go up to someone and say, I forgive you. You could be like, okay, in my heart, I decided to forgive this person. And if they continuously hurt me, then you can protect your peace by setting a boundary, right? And you can prevent abuse, because forgiveness doesn't mean you then excuse all types of behavior after that, right? That's a common misconception. If you forgive somebody, you actually release them from your heart. You give them up to God to, for them to stand judgment before God. But in your heart, you don't judge them anymore, but you can still be like, okay, I'm not going to allow you back into my house. If you steal something from me, let's say, we can still be friends and meet up outside, but you're not going to have a key to my house. Like, that's a boundary, right? It's not, well, if you love me, you would let me stay again. Like, that's not what it means. We can draw boundaries, You guys know I stress the importance of being deep in your word. So we do that every Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time in our deep dive Bible class. We go from Genesis to Revelations. We're currently in Leviticus. So all the symbols, all of these unlocks, you guys don't want to miss out. I hope you guys enjoying. It's at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time at coreoftheheart.com every Saturday. Remember, starve the flesh, feed the spirit. See you guys later.
Something you mentioned a couple minutes ago was the word heart posture.
Yeah.
Right? So can you briefly explain what heart posture is, and then also teach people how to gauge someone's heart posture when they're thinking about maybe approaching somebody to forgive them?
They'll say certain things that will reveal, or what I call leak, their heart posture. In all relationships, whether it's business, whether it's love, whether it's children, parents, whatever, communication has to be number one. Communication is key. And if you're not communicating, that's when relationships die, right? There's a saying, when communication dies, relationships end. So how to read the heart posture is always listening. Okay, why did they say this? What is the meaning behind this? And sometimes even just flat out asking them to confirm with them, hey, you said this, right? But what did you mean by this? Can you elaborate a little bit? Can you give me some feedback, right? But a lot of people tend to just very superficial or surface level. It's important to be able to communicate, and you'll see a person's heart, whether it's prideful, whether it's sad, and then you are then to not diagnose, but to uplift or break down according to that heart. So many times when I have, we're doing Sweden, we're doing these, big events. Every time I go to pastor, the one thing he does as a preventative measure, it doesn't matter what my heart says, because hearts are deceitful too. He says, Johnny, remember who you are. You're nothing. He never goes, wow, look at God working, praise you, blah, 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 because my heart gets exalted easily. Like all human beings, we all love affirmation. We all love being told, wow, you did great, good job, But he tells me, you're nothing without Jesus. It was all Jesus. And it's funny, that allows me to remain humble. And then I'm able to have a heart posture of humility, and I'm able to be cultivated. I'm able to listen, right? So yeah, for those people who want to, say sorry to their parents, because there's people like that, guys, where they come up to me and they're like, Johnny, I went and I tried to apologize to my father too. And actually it went the other way. They were like, yeah, that's right, you're wrong. And they were pissed at me. And I was like, I never told you to do that. I was more of, when I apologized to my father, I didn't agree with that in my heart. I didn't think any of that was going to help. But the one thing I was thankful about was when I listened to my pastor, he was teaching me I needed guidance, right? And my heart was, I wanted to be guided by somebody. And if this guy's not my father figure, my actual dad, then Pastor Kim could be my father, right? So it was a different heart of submission, rather than I'm going to go there and I'm going to gain virality out of this, which I could have never predicted. I'm going to gain some kind of relationship out of this, which all my mind was telling me, there's no way. You're stupid if you go and say sorry to him. He's probably going to step on you, right? And then my dad, right, I could just tell that in his heart, through the pastor, that he didn't want to be that way. My dad would say sorry to my mom. Now, he never said sorry to me, but he said sorry to my mom after he would beat my mom. So I noticed a pattern of he would do it, but he would say sorry, and he didn't want to do it. There was something that was dragging him, and I used to judge him and say, just don't do it. Don't drink anymore. Then again, it's not that easy when you have compounded trauma. It's not that easy when your father was an alcoholic. It's not that easy when you're watching these things grow up and it's a normal thing and you have to now disassociate from that. So yeah.
So how do you forgive someone who's not even sorry? Like, they're still not sorry.
So I think it goes back to you forgive them not because they're sorry, right? If you wait for an apology, it's like expecting a thief to return something he stole, right? It's like there's just no way, right? So you don't do it. Just like you wouldn't expect a thief to return something they stole, you don't expect somebody to just say sorry because they messed up, right? Because there's a lot of factors. What if they don't think that they messed up? What if they make an excuse and according to their standard, they did something that was right? And so they're not going to apologize if they don't feel wrong, right? And it's intention behind it. If they're wrong, then of course they would naturally apologize. They're clearly not apologizing because they probably think they're right, or they're shameful and, that's stopping them, or they're prideful. It could be all of those things. However, we don't expect people to apologize. We don't forgive just because they apologize, because the apology isn't going to affect your feelings fully. Because there are people, for example, who do apologize, but if you feel that's not a sincere apology, now that's a problem. So there's so many different layers to it, but I'll give an example. I did a lot of my friends dirty, and I remember when I was in prison, I would, use people, because when you're in prison, most prisoners know, you have very, very limited contact to the outside world. And so you kind of have to manipulate. You have to be like, oh man, I'm stressed out in here, man. I'm not getting fed. I need this. You'll say that story to like 5 different people. But what happens is that gets around, because one of my friends would pool money together. He didn't have money, but he would have other people pool money. And so they were like, bro, he said the same thing to me. I already sent him $200. This guy's trying to do, like, what is he doing? So they felt some type of way. And they kind of like excommunicadoed me, right? Like, hey, I'm not going to pick up your phone calls. That happens a lot too. People don't pick up the phone calls in prison. And, they kind of just stop writing you and stuff like that. And one day I remember just, one of my cellies was like, bro, it's messed up, man. I used my girl and I slept with another girl, and a conjugal visit. And, and he's like, he felt really bad. So he wrote a letter, and he wrote it to the girl who he cheated on with, who he cheated, on. And he was like, I'm sorry. He was running it back to me, man. What should I say? Like, I really do. And I'm like, bro, just say what's on your heart. So he wrote it out. I proofread it, and then they sent it. Never got a response, right? And I did the same thing. I wrote, my letter, and I sent it to the homies, and I said, hey man, like, please pass this on. I know you may not get it, or you may throw it away. It's cool, but I just want to say that I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to do those things. And what's funny is, like, after I did that, I felt very peaceful. And I saw the peace from my cellie too when he did that. So again, the peace is not, I expect them to write me back. That would be outcome dependent and almost selfish. Rather, you receive the peace of like, okay, I wrote this, and even though like they don't hear it, this was something that I had to let go. So you can forgive people even though they're not sorry about it, because you're allowing yourself to let go of the trauma, almost in a physical way. You're forgiving them physically, emotionally, even mentally, even spiritually, because your father forgave them too. I want people to understand that although we may not forgive them, Jesus allows these people who hurt us to still be alive. That's proof that he forgave them. Jesus doesn't forgive people, then we're doomed, right? Them being forgiven because they fell short too, we're very similar in that way. Yeah, in our standard, people hurt us, they should apologize to us, but we also all fell short. We're in the same boat as these people, right? It's kind of similar to when a person gets a 49 on a test or a 50, 55 on a test. It's both F. But I'm like, I'm 55 and they're 49. It's like, which F is worse? It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
But that's how people are with, well, I apologize, so I'm somehow better. Sure, but if that's the case, you got to apologize to everybody you did wrong. In your opinion, you may not think you did people wrong, but go ask all the people in your life. Go ask, your parents. Go ask the people you defied, right? So again, when these standards are very dangerous, in that you're only going to apologize according to your standard, and you're only accept apologies according to your standard. Well, where do we draw the line? They have a standard. I have a standard. What's to say my standard is better than their standard? Once you recognize, forget all the standards. The standard is God. God forgave me and he forgave that person. So why wouldn't I also forgive? You start to operate from a position of compassion like this.
That's such a deep answer. I love how you talk about writing it out, and then whether or not they even see it, it gave you the release of writing it out, which is so crazy that, it's not even dependent on their response if they're sorry or if they accept an apology, or you can apologize or have forgiveness just through your own understanding of the situation, which is interesting. But that leads me to a part 2 of the question is, do you have to forgive someone? Like, is there a biblical reason to forgive someone? I understand that it's because it gives you your own peace of mind, but besides your own feelings, like, is there a biblical reason to forgive someone?
Yeah.
But before he says that, it's the old, like, what does the Bible mean? Because my mom would use this of, oh, you need to forgive somebody 70 times 7 times. And I was like, oh, I've definitely forgiven them 70 times 7 times, and I still hate them. So then what?
Yeah.
I did it.
So contextually, people misconstrue forgiveness as like almost an obedience type of outcome driven thing, right? You forgive because God tells you to forgive. That's not necessarily true. Everything that God has in the Bible is to benefit us. So if you're peaceful, right, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. God recorded people like Rahab. He recorded people like Samson, prodigal son, so that we don't follow in those footsteps, right? And God knew meticulously that a lot of people struggle with resentment. And what he wants to teach us through forgiveness is letting go of these bonds that affect you, like carrying that backpack full of bricks of unforgiveness. The more someone does something bad to you, it's like carrying another brick in your backpack, and it's breaking your back and it's burdensome. He asks for forgiveness not to benefit him, because nothing we do benefits God. Everything is to benefit yourself. So that's what I love about the Bible is that. But sadly, people teach that as like an, obedience thing. You got to do this for Jesus. It's like not necessarily, right? And the 70 times 7 thing, fun fact, a lot of people don't understand that. So Hebrew is alphanumeric, and there's gematria, right, where there's numbers mean letters and letters mean numbers. So when Peter is asking Jesus, so how many times should I forgive? He's coming from a position of obedience. Well, how many times do I forgive? And then he tells him 70 times 7. So each person he has to forgive him 490 times is wild. If somebody's doing you wrong 4 times, you should cut them off, let alone 490 times. So he's obviously not talking about the exact number superficially. The number in Hebrew, 490, when you put all the characters together, basically signifies and represents Beit Lehem, which is Bethlehem. Bethlehem stands for the house of bread. So what he was telling Peter was, your forgiveness doesn't matter. I am the bread of life, the house of bread that you enter and eat from and have everlasting life and protects you. I am the one who has to forgive. So what he was telling Peter in a very, very deep, profound way was, your forgiveness does not matter, right? If I'm not forgiving people first, and I didn't forgive people through you. But a lot of people think, oh, I have to forgive. They assume the position of Jesus. No, we forgive because, we're forgiven essentially. But people think, no, I have to forgive to be forgiven. So that's different. I forgive because I'm forgiven. Other people are like, no, I forgive to be forgiven. I better do this, otherwise my Father won't forgive me. It's a fear-based thing, and fear is not from the Lord, right? It's not obedience. It's laced with fear, essentially. So yeah, same thing. I'm a gang member. When I see my youngsters running around, I forgive them, even though they're disrespectful at times, even though they do their own thing at times, because I was like that. And I know that my God forgave me. Why wouldn't they forgive them? So the byproduct is not me having to try to forgive them or check them. It's, just like them, I understand. When I look at them, I have hope, because they're as wild as I was, and I was able to change because of my father, because he forgave me. They just don't know about that forgiveness. So I'm not going to push it onto them. I'm going to wait, because God cares about them more than me. He has more capability to forgive them, which he has more than me. So it's not this thing of like, okay, God, I'm going to forgive them and take everything and then, be like Jesus and get crucified for you. That's not our job. We got saved. We're the savee, not the savior. We don't save people, but we show them who saved them. And then when God saves them, we realign everything spiritually. I want to talk about Pando.
Yeah.
So we got on Pando. If you guys don't know what Pando is an app that is open to, it's an open app, but it's also open to prisoners, mainly targeting prisoners. I think it's in 600,000 inmates or something in however many prisons.
Yeah, Pando is a faith-based app. It's created by God, the company or the group, God Behind Bars. And what it is they have these special iPads that they give to inmates, and they have it in the hands of 600,000 inmates across America.
Yeah.
And I think it's like 5,000 different correctional facilities.
That's crazy.
And now the Unlearned Wisdom podcast and Johnny Chang is on that platform.
Yeah, clap it up, guys.
So,
good job.
Obviously, if you're new here, Johnny comes from that world. So it's kind of cool to see that he's now you're able to go back and talk to them.
Yeah, with that magnitude is crazy. And it's cool that they have tablets, because when I was locked up, no tablets. You had see-through TV, and that was it, and everybody would hide their stuff in their see-through TVs. But yeah, it's really amazing. So if you guys are in Mississippi, we're actually going to Mississippi. We're working in partnership with God Behind Bars. So there will be baptisms, there will be a sermon. It's East Mississippi Correctional Facility. And so we'll be there in May.
It's like either May 26th or May 27th.
End of May, basically.
Yeah, Sir John Word will be there for 2 days at the East Mississippi Correctional Facility. So if you have friends or family members that are, that have access to Pando, tell them to look up Johnny Chang on the platform. And if they're specifically in East Mississippi, we'll be there.
Yeah, and it's wild because there's so many people getting saved through it, right? They have a salvations tab. They have the plays. It's going really, really amazing. And our podcast, this podcast is getting aired there. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's almost getting more views than YouTube.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, so that says something about you guys, okay? You guys don't you guys take Johnny for granted. And on that note, if you don't take us for granted, like, comment, and subscribe.
Yes. Yeah.
It's crazy how often you're saying this isn't transactional, whether it comes to forgiveness or trust or faith. And a lot of those things are what we've actually had episodes about. And I feel like these are the pillars of living spiritual life, which is things like forgiveness literally lead to true peace and happiness, like you're saying, being able to let go, not what you can receive, but what you can let go. So where does forgiveness tie into true spiritual life?
It's the basis of it all. It's the basis of it all, because we're forgiven. We forgive because we're forgiven, right? So Jesus, for example, thought about us. He had to let go, think about it, right? From his throne in heaven to come down and dumb himself down to where this flesh, that's like a human being becoming an ant, right? It's like you're giving up all this power, all this glory, so that other people can be forgiven, right? He doesn't have to, and he could have made a very strong argument. Hey, they're going to think I'm a prophet. Hey, they're going to make parades and mock me. Dad, why do I have to do this? They don't even care. And even if I forgive them, they're not going to forgive other people. They're going to freaking be hella hard. But what he did was he recognized something. I'm going to think about other people, and through their forgiveness, reconcile it back to you, God, because he thought about his Father's heart. God always wanted us to be reconciled. Jesus fulfilled that task and healed that task. So likewise, we are people, if we're really going to live spiritual life, we have to also replicate that. Oh, God, you forgave me, and that's why I can forgive other people. If I really claim to know your love, then I will be forgiven. That's why there's a story in the Bible with the person tripping over, 200 denarii and 10,000 talents. This guy racked up 10,000 talents, let's say $10 million worth of debt, right? Equivalent. And his master forgave him. But then because he wanted to start a new life and he never really assumed the position of his master's heart posture, he goes out and sees somebody who owes him $200. That's like $20, right? And he hems him up, throws him in prison, says, I'm going to send your family to prison if you don't give it to me. He himself was forgiven of $10 million worth of debt, but he hemmed somebody up for $20. And so when the master heard that, he then put the debt back on him and then threw him in prison. And it's representative of our hearts, right? Spiritual life is, again, what you can let go, not what you can gain. That man thought, oh, I can gain. Now I have a new life. My slate is wiped clean. Now I'm better than everybody. You owe me, you owe me, you owe me. But that was not the Father's heart. The master's heart was, hey, I forgave you. Now forgive other people. People owe you money. What's $200? What's $20 versus 10 million, right? But he didn't have that heart. So spiritual life is not just forgiveness. Obviously, that's foundational. But it's also, I'm going to be and think about my Father's heart more than anything. Now, what was God's heart overall? He forgave the whole world before they even said sorry. So no apology. Before they even reached out to him or even knew about him, before they were even born. And yet we can't do that. And it's because we don't have the Father's heart. We judge, we hold resentment, and we have our own heart, basically. So yeah, it's foundational to Christianity.
Yeah.
Bars,
Clippy. What it boils down to is like he forgives you, a dirty, worthless sinner.
Yeah.
And you can't even forgive Jeremy for not holding the door sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Think about what matters here.
Yeah, Jerome.
Let's say that you're taking everything that you've just told us and you still try to forgive, but there's still bits of resentment. Like where does that come from?
Resentment comes from the enemy. And again, healing is a process. So you will feel parts of resentment, but that's also something that God allows so you can bring it to him. Hey, God, look I can't help this. I learned everything. Johnny's saying these things. I'm trying to apply it, and some of you guys will, but it's still not working for me. But that's beautiful. It's actually a really good position to be in because that then allows you to go to God. If you can just take these lessons and hear and heal, why would you need God? If you have a good relationship with God, it then bleeds into all other relationships, right? So it's important to understand that he's going to allow resentment. He's going to allow pains. He may even allow big blowouts again. You thought everything was cool, and one day your mom flips or your dad flips again, who's giving you all that trauma, and they say, I take my sorry back, let's say, right? And then they flip on you. Does that mean God's not working? No, actually, that means God's working even more. See, the enemy, he does not like when you're happy and peaceful. He comes to divide and conquer. So if you guys are sitting there and you have resentment in you, that resentment ultimately leads to dividing and isolating, right? Which is pulling away and disconnecting from people. That's exactly what he wants. Now, God brings unity. He never divides people, right? So if you start to feel resentment, then you can recognize, oh, this is the enemy. And I can't fight the enemy alone. I have to bring this to God. Look, Father God, Satan is trying to make me take ownership about my resentment towards X, Y, and Z person. But Lord, you've already forgiven them. Please, you also give me the heart to forgive them and to forgive myself and to move forward. And that's actively seeking God, which is just what he wants. That's exactly what he wants. This is his whole plan.
Honestly, it already answers the next question I was going to ask, which was, what if you're tired of being the bigger person?
Yeah.
And the answer simply is to take it to God.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a huge step that people forget, because it's like, okay, you gave this really good instruction that I have to be in a certain mindset.
Yeah.
And then, here's the tactics if they don't accept it or whatever it is. But the biggest thing that I keep forgetting is when things negatively happen to you, a lot of times we're like, okay, how do I level up as a person so I can handle all these situations, instead of the simplest of do nothing.
Yeah.
And bring it to God.
Amen. These bars, bro.
I got a bars finally.
In another situation, there are people who like to kind of sit in that unforgiveness, right? It's this victim mentality where it's like, what if I like being here though? What if I don't want to? What if bitterness feels normal to me, right? I'll use the analogy of dogs that drink antifreeze. Why a lot of dogs drink antifreeze is because it's sweet to them. But just because it's sweet or comfortable or tastes good, the end result is death. Right. So, yeah, you may like it. It may feel good, but feelings are temporary. Feelings fade. If you allow the cancer in your body, right, the spiritual cancer of unforgiveness, even if it feels good or feels right, the end result is still misery, sadness, depression. It's just delayed. Right. So, I would say most of the time why people sit well in pain is because they identify with pain. That's their identity. They've made pain their identity, essentially, right? And that's no way to live. And I get it. Me being a gang member, like when I was in prison, for example, I wanted to, stay there, which was crazy. Who wants to stay in prison? But after doing years, you get institutionalized and you get scared because your identity has been, the F number for me, or 86 number in YA. So I'm like, man, when I go out there, I got to be Johnny and I got to be this outstanding citizen. And I can't do that. So it was very uncomfortable for me. But that was the norm, was to go out there and live a life and be, rehabilitated and stuff like that. But because that wasn't normal to me and that was attacking my very identity, which was rooted in pain and trauma, I thought that it was not normal. But actually, the way my OG told me, shout out to the homie I was locked up with, and my cellmate, before I left, he goes, you can decorate a prison cell, but it's still a prison cell, so it's like you could build a mansion inside of a cage. That doesn't make it a mansion. It's still, a cage, basically. It's just a bigger cage. So likewise, when you get out there, young homie, he was telling me, you got to be able to strive to be better, because you can't be in this cage of comfortability, which is a cage of failure and a cage of pain. You got to desensitize yourself to the pain and grow out of that, actually. And so it was such a bar, for me. And a lot of people, again, have made their pain into their pleasure.